days, if you believed in science, old days meaning going back 150, 200 years, and since then, or even before to Galileo times, that if you believed in science, you had to reject religion. So here's my little secret for you. That's Christianity. That ain't Judaism. That's the Christians. They were the ones who had issues with religion and science. We, Jews, are the opposite. We're the opposite. If it's science, give it to me. I studied science for almost 15 years. I love it. My kids study it. You know why? Because religion tells me why and science tells me how. They're not even doing the same thing. They're doing different things. Science will tell me how. How did this form? How does nuclear fusion work? How do we measure something in an absolute form? But science should not tell me why. Science oversteps its bounds when it says, and therefore you have no moral, you have no soul. Hello, that's not science anymore. Religion tells me why and science tells me how. So that's great. Give me more of the how. I want to know the how. You know why I want to know the how? Because if I know how God did something, then it makes me, listen up, it makes me appreciate God more. It makes me appreciate the world more. So many years ago, I mentioned Galileo. So he was a scientist who through his studies and through his research and through his observation, he said, guess what? The sun does not revolve around the earth, but rather the earth revolves around the sun. Okay, what revolves around what? Right? It's got the earth around the sun. He was right. The church says, take that back. Take it back. Because we'll kill you if you don't take it back. So what did Galileo do? He's a person of principle. What did he do? He took it back. He did take it back. But they didn't trust that he really meant it. So they imprisoned Galileo the rest of his life in a room. So Galileo was stuck in his room because of science. When Darwinism became a thing, and we say, oh wow, the life came through evolution, Christianity went running around scared. They began banning the books. Wow, if there is Darwinism, if there's evolution, then you don't need God. So therefore they pushed that away. Says who? That makes no sense. Maybe evolution is how God made it happen. And there's a mechanism for everything. Why can't that be one of the mechanisms? It boggles the mind why there has to be a fight. And interestingly enough, if you go back to the Talmud times, 200 years ago, 2,000 years ago, you will see many things that are mentioned in science today are mentioned in the Talmud. So we're going to cover some of them. We're going to cover some evolution. But I want to start with an interesting story. So one of the things I learned about famous people, so I was rabbi in Hollywood for many years. When I was in UCLA, I gave a class to the Hollywood people once a month. It was called the Hollywood class. And in order to be in my class, you had to be in the industry. So I had people who were writers, they were actors, they were producers, and a lot of famous people would come. I'm not going to name drop, but a lot of people came to the class, and it was fantastic that they would. And I'm still connected to them today, and it's been very helpful. We've done stuff with Netflix and so on. So when one of the things I learned about famous people is they have to eat. And they like good food just as much as you do. So if a person that you want to reach out to, you think they're ignoring you, offer them a steak dinner if you got the money for it. You will be shocked by how many yeses you get. So I'll give you an example. You guys, do you get these spam texts before an election? Vote this, go for this congressman, right? So now what I do is I have a copy and paste. I say, oh, thanks so much for messaging me. My name is Rabbi Klatzko. I own the world's largest Jewish social network. If the congressman would like to meet me, I'll be glad to take them to coffee or glad to take them to lunch. And guess what? They're all my friends now because they respond. Food talks. So when did this come up? When did this really come to the fore? Well, in 2016, there was discovery in science that may be one of the most important discoveries of your lifetime. And I'm not going to get technical because I'm going to lose you, but it's something called gravitational waves. Anyone familiar with gravitational waves? Not so much? That's okay. Okay. So gravitational waves was the fulfillment of one of the last theories of Einstein that Einstein said could never be proven. And the idea that since time and space are one fabric that we call space-time, that if there's a strong enough collision in space-time, if there's a big enough disturbance, you can actually create a ripple in time. Now, you may not notice a ripple in time, but it actually happens all the time. We lose milliseconds of life, or we gain milliseconds, but we don't notice it. But it happens. But it was theorized, and there were 3 laboratories that were built. And the laboratories were called LIGO, laser interferometer. Okay, so LIGO used 2 lasers, an X and Y axis, because light travels at a constant speed. And if the light from the X axis arrived before the Y axis, because they were in a 90-degree angle, then since light has to travel the same speed, if it reaches at one point before the other, it means there was a ripple. Now, LIGO was originally thought of almost 40 years ago, and people's careers started and ended with nothing, meaning they didn't see any gravitational waves. And then, in 2016, they discovered the first gravitational wave. And that was a very big deal, because when you have gravitational waves, you can actually go back in time much closer to the Big Bang. Because we can't go further than 300,000 years after the Big Bang, because the photons were stuck in the primordial plasma. It was very, very hot. So you have to wait until it was cool enough for photons to go. So we can't see back further than 300,000 years after the Big Bang. But through gravitational waves, we can. So there was a scientist, I'm not going to name him right now. There was a scientist, and he was the head of LIGO. So I messaged him and I said, hey, would you like to do lunch with me? I'm a rabbi, I live in New York, live in Muncie, and would you like to do lunch with me? When are you going to be in town? So he said, I'm a professor in Syracuse, the head of LIGO was also a professor, and he said, I am going to be in New York, in Manhattan, for a conference in a few months. I'll be glad to do lunch with you. Okay, I'm going to tell you his name. You can Google him. He has a TED Talk about his discovery of LIGO. His name is Peter Solson. The only reason it's important to know his name is because I assumed he was Italian, because I don't know, Solson, salsa, I don't know, something about the name. So I decided to take him to a pasta place in Manhattan, and I found a kosher pasta place, and I said, Peter, we're going to have dinner, and you're the head of LIGO, and whenever somebody, and he was up for a Nobel Prize, which it actually won the next year, I figured this will be cool. Future Nobel Prize winner, let's have some lunch together. We sat down, and I began to pepper him with questions, and then I said to him, question, what happened the moment gravitational waves was discovered? What was your reaction? You waited 40 years. Now, he wasn't there all 40 years. Whenever he began his career, it was in the middle of life. What was your first reaction? So he said, well, actually, gravitational waves were discovered on Rosh Hashanah, and I was in temple. I said, 1 second, you're a Jew? I said, okay, that figures. Scientist, He said, and I don't bring my phone to synagogue because I don't interrupt the service. So I left it at home. So my phone was blowing up with emails congratulating me, and I didn't even know about it because my phone was home. And then after Rosh Hashanah, I discovered it, and it was really amazing. So I said, what was your first reaction? What was your first reaction? And you know what he told me? Peter Solson. First reaction, gravitational waves. He said, my first reaction was, I went out and bought a mezuzah and tefillin. one second. You're about to win a Nobel Prize for proving Einstein's theory. Why is that your first reaction? Fill in a mezuzah. He said, because after gravitational waves have been proven, if you don't believe in God, you shut off your brain. Because gravitational waves prove the cosmological constant. Now, what is that? There are certain constants in the universe. Constants mean that they are reliable equations that don't make sense. I'll give you an example. We'll get a little bit technical. So there are four forces that are the vanguard of all science in our universe. They're called the strong nuclear, the weak nuclear, the magnetic, and gravity. So let me ask you something. Is gravity a strong force or a weak force? Strong, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to show you something. Ready? A demonstration. Here we go. Ready? Watch this. Watch this. Here we go. You guys saw that?
Huh?
What did I just do?
Picked it up. You defied gravity.
I just fought gravity of the entire Earth. Earth was pulling this down. The entire weight, this fact, the Earth was pulling this down, and I beat Earth. L'chaim. How did I beat Earth? The answer is gravitational force is an incredibly weak force. It's so weak that there are even theories in science that part of the force must be siphoned off to another dimension because it doesn't make sense that it's so weak. And yet, it's strong enough to create nuclear fusion, which creates suns and stars, which creates heavy elements, which creates you and I. So it's so weak that I can beat it, and yet it's so strong that it could collapse into a black hole. So I don't get it. Is gravity strong or weak? The answer is that gravity is dialed in to an incredibly precise number. The measurement of gravity is so delicate in the universe that if it would be off in one part in 10 to the 18th, well, what does 10 to the 18th look like? So ready? Let's put it as 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 18, right? If it was off in one part in 10 to the 18th, we would lose the world. We would lose the universe. How did we happen to end up in the universe that was dialed in a way that there's no lottery? You'd have to win the lottery multiple times to equal 10 to the 18th. And yet the world we're living in, gravity is dialed in perfectly. Not one iota more, not one iota less. Now that could be an accident. Those who don't believe in God, they say, well, that's an accident, we got lucky. 1 second, that's luck. There's another force. And the other force is called dark energy. Dark energy plus dark matter equal 95% of the mass of the universe. Without that, we would all collapse. There's dark energy between us right now. How dialed in does dark energy need to be in order for the universe not to be destroyed? 1 part in 10 to the 120. Now, if you want to know what's 1 part in 10 to the 120, that's too big. That number's 10, that means 1 with 120 zeros. If it's off by 1 part in 1 to the 20th, we have no universe. How big is that number? So, if I were to have a pin in front of me, how many atoms are at the tip of the pin? About 10 to the 20th. There's so many atoms are so small. How many atoms are there in a cup of water? How many atoms are there in the entire universe? And the universe is about 93 billion light years from end to end. How many atoms are there in the universe? About 10 to the 82nd. That means you have a better chance of identifying one atom in the universe than for the universe to exist. Much better chance. Because every time you add 1 0, it's exponentially bigger. So there's a big difference between 10 to the 80 and 10 to the 120. We should not be here. And that's called the cosmological constant. And all of those people who go around on campus, because I'm a campus rabbi, and they say, well, I'm an atheist. I said, oh, that's interesting. What books have you read? Just curious. Really, an atheist? Really? Like, what's your argument? Well, I don't see God. Really? That's your big argument? Do you see atoms? Do you see air? Do you see dark matter? Well, I think we don't need God. Cosmological constant says that we do need God, because our world should not exist. Now, one last thing, and then we'll get out of the weeds. Those avowed atheists who really just hate the idea of God, they know this is a big issue. The cosmological constant for all those atheists is a huge issue. Our world shouldn't exist, because don't forget, in the same universe that gravity has to be dialed in, dark matter has to be dialed in. So 10 to the 120th and 10 to the 18th have to fall out on the same universe. And it's a lot more constant than those. So what do they say? Well, maybe there are many universes. If there are many universes, then we happen to be in the universe that happened to strike gold. And all the other universes, the cosmological constant didn't fit, and those universes actually exploded, and we're the only universe that survived. Does that make sense? Multiverse. It doesn't, because whatever creates a multiverse needs to have a constant also. Okay, we're not going to get into that, but let's backtrack a little, okay? So this guy Peter Solson, he comes to me and he says, you know what? I've got tefillin, I got mezuzah. A few weeks later, Peter Solson's wife knocks on our door. She was near Muncie, and she came to visit my wife. She said, my husband and I would like to be invited for Shabbat. We want to learn about Shabbat. Nobel Prize winner wants to learn about Shabbat. So, science and Judaism don't have to have an issue. Now, I'm going to tell you a funny story. When I was 17, I was in high school. I think I was probably a senior. And I was in high school in Staten Island. That's where I went to high school, in Staten Island, New York. And I decided to play hooky one day. I used to play hooky. I wasn't a great kid. But I had my freedom. And I liked to go to Manhattan. So I played hooky one day from my school. And I took a train to the ferry, because to go from Staten Island, you got to take a train to a ferry, and then another train. You end up in Manhattan. I'm on the train, and right across from me, sitting facing me, was a guy and a girl. They looked like a boyfriend, girlfriend, and they were schmoozing, and I was bored. So I decided I'm going to have a little fun with them, because people are for playing with, okay? So they were just sitting there, and the guy, he's eating an apple. And he's got an apple in a paper bag. And as he's speaking to this young lady, he puts his hand in the bag, takes a bite out of the apple, and puts it right back in the bag. So I'm sitting right across from them, and I say, wow. And they look up, like I said it loud enough for them to hear, and they said, excuse me? I said, wow, that was amazing. What was amazing? They're both looking at me, what are you talking about? I said, you know the way that you just like took that apple and put it in your mouth and put it... They said, what are you talking about? They think I'm the crazy one. I did sound crazy. I said, well, when I take an apple, I can't do that. When I take an apple, I have to, when I pick it up, I have to speak to it. They look at me like, you speak to your produce? Like, what do you say to your apple? I said, obviously depends which apple. I don't say the same thing to every apple, because every apple is different. I say sometimes I look at the apple, and the apple will be red, and then you know how you see an apple and it's red, and like there's like a little green spot where it's like red, and then it gets like pinkish and a little green, like a little spot. So sometimes there's a little green there. So I tell the apple, hey, You missed the spot. That's what I tell the apple. And then the apple says back to me, and they look at me like the apple replies, yes, the apple replies. I said, the apple says, well, I actually used to be completely green. I said, used to be completely green? He goes, yeah. Before I was ready to be eaten, I was green. You know why? Because I wasn't ripe to be eaten. And if you eat me, you're going to get a stomachache because I'm not ripe yet. So you know what I did? I made myself green because the leaves around me are green and I can be camouflaged amongst the leaves. So now that I'm ready to be eaten, I made myself red and they grabbed me before I had a chance to finish a job. But originally I was green so that you wouldn't see me and pick me before my time. So I look at the apple and I say to the apple, I'm not believing you. I have an issue because look what you're telling me, Mr. Apple. Number one, you're telling me that you know that you're supposed to be eaten. How do you know you're supposed to be eaten? Think about it. How does an apple know that it's supposed to be eaten? 1 second. And number two, you know you're supposed to be eaten by beings that have eyes. Apple, how do you know eyes exist? How does the apple know that I have eyes? The apple doesn't have eyes. And number three, you know that my eyes can tell the difference between red and green. How do you know what color is? How do you know that my eyes can tell the difference between red and green? Number four, you know how to manipulate your color so you can blend in. That's like a superpower. Can you imagine if we can manipulate our color? Where, like there are animals, octopus, there are animal cuttlefish that can do that, but we can't manipulate our color. So you know you're supposed to be eaten, number one. You know that eyes exist. You know the eyes can tell the difference between color. You can manipulate your color. And number five, listen to this. How do you know how my gastrointestinal system works? How do you know what I can eat? Like you know what I could digest? You're like Apple Einstein. It's a play on words, right? You like that, right? You're a brilliant apple. You know all this stuff. It's crazy. So you know what I do? I take this apple. Are you guys following? I take this apple. I bite into it. And watch what happens. I bite into it. And that apple cinnamony smell goes into my nostrils. My nostrils are cool because my nostrils can smell 1 part in 6 million. That means if there's 6 million of nothing and 1 part of appleness, and the appleness goes into my nose, my brain says, apple around. There's an apple around. I bite it, and instantly, this is what happens. It smells good. It tastes good. It's got a good texture. It looks good, and it's good for me. That is the big five. If you want to know a life hack, or if you want to know a secret code in nature that Hashem put in, this is it. It's the big five. Before something is ready to be eaten, it is missing these 5 things. It doesn't look good, doesn't smell good, doesn't taste good, it doesn't have a good texture, and it's not good for you. The moment it is ready, all those 5 come at the same time. Think about it. A watermelon. Nothing better than a good crunch of watermelon, right? Red, got the watermelon red taste. Even in the watermelon, as I'm going down near the rind, what disappears? As I go near the protective rind, you know what disappears? Flavor. The color, right? It goes from red to white, the color. The texture, doesn't taste, it's rubbery. The smell, the taste, and it's not good for me. In one fruit, all 5 at the same time. So I'm eating this apple, and I'm eating with my teeth. Now, how many kinds of teeth do I have? We have any dentists in the room? No? So, future? Yeah? So what do I got? I said, how many dentists? What's your name, Nantucket? I said, how many kinds of teeth do we have?
Molars. I know molars.
Okay, good. Canines, molars, canines.
I don't know.
Bicuspids. One more, incisors.
I just know the dentists do that all the time.
Yeah, until you start losing them. Then you say, "Oh, I miss my." Really? Good for you. Don't take credit. It's genetic. It's genetic. Yeah. Oh, they got to floss because it's good for your heart. Yeah. Anyways, listen up. So, I bite into this apple with the 4 kinds of teeth that I have. Now, why do I need 4 kinds of teeth? Why do I need 4 kinds of teeth? The answer is because I'm an omnivore. I can eat meat, I can eat vegetation. To eat meat, I need the first 2. To eat vegetation, I need the last 2. So how does Hashem make it? Hashem makes it that animals that can digest only meat, they only need the front 2. Animals that can only have grain, only need the back 2. Animals like us that can have all 4, it's because we can digest everything. And our teeth are protected by enamel that's almost as hard as diamond. Except that little babies, when they're nursing or they fall asleep with a bottle, their teeth are bathed in sugar and their teeth get rotten. So the only thing that we have training wheels for are teeth. We don't get training wheel fingers. You lose a finger, God forbid, you don't get that finger back. Teeth, we get training wheel teeth because little babies need training wheel teeth. So it's there, it gets bathed with sugar, it gets rotten, it goes out, then we get fresh teeth. And it's covered with enamel, like diamond. So I'm biting into this apple, and it smells good. At the moment it smells good, my brain says, tongue, do your thing. And my tongue can taste 4 different senses, 4 different flavors, sour, sweet, hot, bitter. It's able to taste, and the teeth don't constantly bite on the tongue. Somehow, don't think about it too much because then you'll bite your tongue. But somehow I'm able to chew, my tongue goes in and out, and yet I'm not constantly chewing on my tongue. And then it goes down and my body digests it and is able to take out everything that it needs to, get rid of the waste, put it in the blood, give me energy, give me fiber, and I'm eating it and it's amazing. And the outside looks amazing. And that's cool. You know why? Because the outside is really just a wrapper. The red part of an apple is a wrapper. Can you imagine if a Hershey's bar had an edible wrapper? God made an edible wrapper. That's really cool. As a matter of fact, part of the reason we have an edible wrapper is because the inside's not red. So it should look good to the eye. An orange that I don't eat the peel, the inside has to be orange also because it's got to look good. But the apple, only the outside has to look good because I can eat the peel. Are you guys following? Yeah. We are living in a designer world. So I eat this apple and it tastes good, it smells good, it's good for me. And then I get to the middle and I bite on something and I spit it out. And my conversation with the apple, by the way, this boyfriend, girlfriend, they're looking at me and they don't think I'm crazy anymore. They're just like, this is interesting. I never looked at the world like that. So I told them, I get to the middle of the apple, I bite on something and it's black and I spit it out. And I said, hey, you messed up. That didn't taste like anything. And the apple said, I knew you would spit that out. Because you know what that is? That's my seed. In this thing that's so small, I could fit 5 of them on my thumbnail. In that little black nothing is a tree. There's a tree. There is a foreman. There are engineers. There are apples. There is photosynthesis. There is DNA. There is superfood that's protecting it. And all you need to do is watch, just spit it out. And it goes into the ground and it's got everything it needs. It's got dirt, it's got rain, it's got sunshine. It's good to go. And this little nothing of a seed is the most amazing factory. There is no scientific invention that's ever been created that can mimic a seed. You know, when a tree grows, the roots have to constantly balance the tree. Otherwise, the trees will fall over. They're very heavy. So there's an engineer inside saying, we need more roots there. We need more roots there. We need some sunshine. Give me some branches there. We need some fruit. We need to bring the water from the ground up into the roots, to the tree, to the leaves, to the fruit. I want to tell you something fascinating. Do you know that trees have feelings? This is not like new agey stuff. It is well known that if a tree has fruit and the fruit rolls a distance away and the fruit goes into the ground and it creates its own tree, so you have like a mother tree and a baby tree because the baby tree came from the mother. Do you know in a forest, the mother tree that gave birth to this baby tree will find the baby tree's roots and get water to the baby tree, even if there are other trees in between? It will go around those to make sure that the baby tree has enough water. It's craziness. So, what are we saying here? We're saying that we live in a designer world. When you have an atheist on campus and the atheist says, well, I think that there's no God. I think that it came by accident. I want to tell you something. If we go to another planet, exoplanets they're called today. If I go to another planet and I hope that there's life, what do I need to find on that planet? Anyone? What do I need to find? Water. What do I need to find to prove intelligent life? There's a hard question. What would I have to find on a planet to say that, you know what, there's intelligence there?
A brain.
Brain, forget about the computer.
Civilization.
Yeah, a brain is, by the way, the most complex thing in the universe. There's nothing like a brain. What do they have to find to prove that there was once intelligent life there? You know what they have to find? Listen to this. All they have to find is a square. A square pillar proves intelligent life. Why is that? This is not a total square, but look. 90-degree angle. It's an aesthetically pleasing, utilitarian angle. That means I can do a lot with a 90-degree angle. So I can find a rock that has 90-degree angle. There's 4 chances in 360, right? 4 in 360 to get a 90-degree angle. But watch. What if I have a second 90-degree angle that's attached? So now I have 4 in 360 times 4 in 360. Are you following? What if there's a third 90-degree angle? What if there's a fourth? If we go to another planet and we find, let's say, a pillar, and that pillar is just a square, you know what we say? We say that there was once intelligent life in that universe. Now think about this a moment. Think about this. If a square pillar is all NASA needs to prove that there was intelligence, what does a peacock show? What does a blue whale show? Not a silly square, not a rock, but an immune system. I use an Apple computer. I have a very good MacBook Pro. Do you know, I switched over from Windows to Mac, really happy. Not the phone, but yeah, no, I switched to the phone. I don't like the phone so much. How many MacBook Pros would it take to equal one human brain? I have a really good MacBook Pro. It's all specced out. How many would it take? Now, well, there's processing power, and let me show you the processing power that's going on right now. By me walking or standing, I am balancing. I don't know that I'm balancing, but I am. My brain is doing the calculation. As I look at you, I noticed you're wearing something. It says St. Andrews. It's blue. I see your smile. I need you, so you're a little bit tired, but that's okay. You're fighting it. I'm watching everything here. I got it all, right? My eyes see depth. I see all the way massage back there. I see it all. Like, people don't realize we see stuff as teachers, right? All these things I'm computing. I know our Father. I've been here a long time ago. I remember your rabbi, Rabbi Fetter, from way back. He looks exactly the same. A few white hairs, but otherwise.
My daughter thinks some of them.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. I notice that some of you guys give great feedback to a speaker. Okay, I want to tell you something. Speakers live on the feedback of the listener. So when you nod and you get it, that gives me energy. You're my spinach. So I'm noticing the feedback. Like also, by the way, my blood sugar is being regulated. I don't know it, but it is. I can hear myself speak, but there's a whole complicated formula because really, my brain should be vibrating and everything should be echoing. Actually, I could hear every little thing going on, but everything is much quieter. Really, everything is quiet. The waves of sound are magnified in my ear 48 times. So everything that you hear right now is actually 48 times quieter. It's like this. But your ears are able to magnify it. That's really cool. And I'm balancing. And I got antibiotics that are going on, antibodies that are protecting me. How many MacBook Pros would it take to equal a human brain? The answer is 100 million. 100 million. The brain's processing power is so crazy, listen up, it's so crazy that information is whirling about my brain and it's being changed from a chemical to an electrical impulse, which are two different formats. You know what a format is? You know, picture something in the old days, you used to have VHS, you know, those little old tapes, and then we got DVDs. So DVD and VHS are a different format, and you have to have something that can change something from that old tape to a DVD. You know what I'm saying? In my brain, all the information is whizzing about from liquid format to electrical at almost 200 miles an hour. Whizzing about in my brain, changing formats every second without me noticing. Why am I telling you all this? Because when you go out, when you leave here, and someone just says, "Oh, I don't believe the world came by itself." Like, really? Brains? DNA? DNA? You know what DNA is? DNA is computer code squared. ACTG. These four little proteins, ACTG. Through ACTG, I could create you, I could create a penguin, I could create a sunflower with the same ACTG. Just mix around the letters. You mix around the letters and you can make anything. Who thought of that? Who thought of using just 4 proteins and you get challah, and you get a buffalo, and you get a dinosaur. Even the dinosaurs all use ACTG. Oh, there's no God. There's no God. It happened by itself. Really? Really? Eyes? You know, every time I blink, 21 chemicals bathe my eyes. 21. Not Bausch and Lomb that has 1. 21. And I blink in a blink, which is good, because when I'm driving, if it took me a while to clean my eyes, then I'd get into a crash. So I can blink, and I have these little things called eyelashes. They're not for looks. They're little mini fans. They fan away the dirt to make sure that my eyes stay clean. And the retina in my eye, it gets big and small in a split second. So I can focus on this fine gentleman over here, and then I can focus on you back there, and I don't notice that my retina's getting bigger and smaller. When it gets dark, bigger, smaller. And my eyebrows, when I sweat, you ever play a good game of basketball? And the sweat, it comes down your forehead, and instead of going into your eyes and blinding you, that's what eyebrows are for. They're meant to make sure that the sweat traces to the outside of your face so you don't get blinded. And your ears work like a Bose wave radio. Oh, there's no God. This stuff made itself. Everything made itself. Science is not the enemy. It never was. The opposite. The more we learn, the more we say, wow, God, you're so much cooler than I thought. Darwin did not know what a cell was. He had no idea what a cell was. Darwin said the eye scares him. How could the eye come about? If the eye scared him, he would have been terrified of a cell. We're made up of trillions and trillions of cells. A cell in my body is a city. It's an entire city. With a king, with a watchman, with guards, with messengers, with people. There are cells that are cities. That's what a cell is. How does it do that? I'm going to stop here. I want to take a few questions.